Welcome, everyone, from around the state and the country to the AARP Caregiving Series. I'm Janine Humber from AARP Massachusetts. Today, you will learn more about AARP's HomeFit Guide and how you can use it to make your home into a place where you can stay as you and your loved ones age. About this event, many older adults wish to stay in their homes and communities as they age, but only a small fraction of homes have universal design features, such as single-story layouts or wheelchair-accessible sinks. AARP HomeFit workshops teach participants about the types of home modifications that can help them age in a place and go about their daily activities while staying comfortable and independent with a reduced risk of injury. You can sign up for the free AARP HomeFit Guide, and AARP membership is not required. You can read more about this information at aarp.org/MA for all Massachusetts events, and for your local events, you could whittle it down to aarp.org/local. You can also find information on caregiving at aarp.org/caregivingma. Thank you. And I would like to introduce tonight's speaker, Andrea Cordes.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen and we'll get started with our presentation because I can talk for hours about HomeFit. So my name is Andrea Cordes. I am a certified occupational therapy assistant. So I've been doing that for over 20 years now. And I've worked in every setting you could think of with older adults, with adults and teenagers, but never children. And now I currently work for the Massachusetts Councils on Aging as the training and education manager. So for several years, I've been a volunteer with AARP, doing several presentations. This HomeFit one is one of many that I do, and it's probably my favorite because it's so occupational therapy based. So tonight we're going to be talking about how to make your home fit. So we're really going to think about what comes to mind when you think of the word home. You're welcome to put things in the chat. I love having a little interaction even on these webinar styles. So if you want to ask questions or pop things in the chat, that's fantastic. There is a handout. I believe Janine can put that in the chat, the link to download the HomeFit guide. And if not, I can definitely put that in at the end. There will be a slide that has a website that you can get all of these things for free. So let's get started with the presentation, mostly so that I can have this red glow off of my face. It's such a bright slide, right? All right, so this presentation was designed to introduce you to AARP HomeFit and the HomeFit Guide, which is a really fantastic resource that's available online, or you can even order a hard copy by mail. And it kind of guides you through all of the home modifications further than things that we'll even talk about tonight. So I definitely recommend downloading the HomeFit Guide from the website when we get to that portion. So tonight we're specifically going to look at things like recognizing key home modifications, applying some DIY fixes to make your space more safe and livable, and DIY, do it yourself kinds of things. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. And we're going to also talk about planning for some more expensive changes that you might want to make to a residence that would allow you to have a more lifelong occupancy. We'll use a few words that I'll kind of talk through in case you're not sure of what the meaning is. But let's look at our agenda next. So here's what we're going to kind of accomplish tonight. We're going to look at the perks of making your home fit. We are going to talk about universal design, and that's a term that I will describe a little bit in a moment, just so that you understand what universal design is and why it's important to make your home fit. We're going to kind of do a little bit of a home tour, going through some things that will make your home fit. We're going to go over some do-it-yourself fixes. And then we're also going to talk about some more professional upgrades, and I'll show you a few different ways that you can kind of determine which parts are DIY and which parts are more professional, more better handled by a professional. So even small little changes can make a huge difference. Research shows that home modifications, even small ones. Oh, I see somebody has a question. Grayson, do you have a question? Nope. Okay. Well, you could put your question in the chat too if you wanted to, just so that we can kind of keep moving with the presentation and I can get to questions at the end maybe. So again, research shows that home modifications, even tiny little recommendations, can reduce the need for some costly medical care. They can increase livability and also enhance independence. And these updates can result in a lifetime of living safely and comfortably in the home that you love. So we're going to talk a little bit about the cost of not staying in your home. Now I'm going to give you some information that comes from the Genworth, the folks at Genworth, and this can give you. I'm going to give it to you nationally because I know we are coming in from various places, not just Massachusetts. So I'm going to give you the numbers that come from the national outlook. So this is really the cost of not staying in your home. So we're going to actually start from the bottom of the list and work our way up. So nursing home, that highest level of care where folks are needing 24 hours a day of skilled nursing care with their activities of daily living. That is going to cost you for a private room nationally. That will cost about $9,000 or no, $9,700 a month. And then, that's a lot of money. Actually, that's semi-private. Then the private room is going to cost you $13,000 a month. That's a lot of money to think about. So that's the highest level of care. So then we're going to move up the list there and down the list of levels of care and look at assisted livings. So assisted living nationally, the average nationally is about $5,300 a month. Now, yes, that cost covers your meals, your basically room and board kind of things. It may not include cable and phone service and things like that, but $5,300 a month nationally. And I know here in Massachusetts, it's over that by about $2,000. And that's per month. So that's a high cost of living as well. Now, if you were to stay at your home and maybe perhaps go to that next level up, that adult daycare, which is really like a day program that maybe runs from about 9 to 3. And it's for somebody who maybe needs just supervision. They might need a little bit of help throughout the day, but not a ton, more like supervision. That's going to cost only about $2,000 a month. So we're coming down in cost, but you're staying home. And then also staying home, if you paid somebody privately for a private duty home health aide to help with some of those tasks, those activities of daily living, it could cost about $3,000 a month, depending on, and that's going to range $3,000 to up to $6,000 based on the needs of the client. So we're looking at some really high costs of not staying in your home and a few options for also staying in your home. Now, I'm going to show you this next slide and just let you know that these handouts are all available online. So I know Janine wrote in the chat that in a couple of days, you will receive a link with all of these, that you will get these handouts probably via email. And you're going to get not only the handouts, these checklists here, but you'll also get the guide that is, I think it's about 36 pages. And it really goes through room by room. So it's a great thing to print out or even just kind of review with your family and kind of go room by room and just check out your own home. And there's some really great checklists in there as well. So I'm going to show you this slide. These little price tags are going to be in the top corner of each slide that we talk about some possible fixes within the home. And you'll notice there's going to be some that have one single price tag. That is something that is a little more cost effective. And it's also something like that could be considered like a quick fix or a DIY. I like to always say the caveat is that a lot of those things I still might have somebody professional do myself because I'm just not a handy person. So just know that the single price tag means it's probably a little easier and it's a little more cost effective. The double price tags is going to represent something that's either more expensive, or also it could be something that is harder to do and requires a professional, maybe requires a little bit more planning. So just keep that in mind. I would personally probably put two price tags on most of the things myself. But we'll talk about that. So we're going to go through a few general quick fixes that will enhance the livability and also the safety. And these are not necessarily things that are unique to a specific room. So we're just going to go through these kind of quickly. These are more safety related in my eyes here. Starting with like the biggest safety things, smoke detectors and CO2 detectors. I'm sure you're all very familiar with that chirp of your smoke detector that needs a battery change, right? But we need to have them, and we need to have functioning smoke detectors and CO2 detectors. They've changed a lot over the years, and now a lot of times they're hardwired, they're battery free, or they have like a really extended life battery. I know where I remember every time the time changed, you had to check the batteries, and they were those 9-volt batteries that like you only had in the house twice a year. But now they're longer lasting batteries, or they're hardwired into your system. They might cost a little bit more, but they're more reliable and they last longer. And some smoke detectors also are like a combination CO2 detector as well, which is definitely a benefit to have kind of that combo one. It's really important to have these in your home with any type of fuel burning appliance, a fireplace, an attached garage. You want to definitely have a carbon monoxide detector on every level of the house, especially in the bedrooms or near the bedrooms, like just outside the bedroom door is fine. CO2 detectors can also be battery powered. They can be plug-in, and they can also be hardwired as well. And they should either be placed 5 feet from the ground or just a few feet below the ceiling. So next, we are going to talk about fire extinguishers and water heaters. So let's talk fire extinguishers first. Your kitchen, you should definitely have what's called an ABC rated fire extinguisher, and you want to have it somewhere accessible. You don't want to have it, that you have to dig through the back of a cabinet to find it. You want to have it right there where you can grab it. You want it to be lightweight enough that you can actually physically pick it up, because sometimes the big ones are really heavy and it's hard to pick it up and maneuver if you need it. And you want one that's a multi-purpose, so that ABC rate. Once a year, you should have these inspected to make sure that it's fully charged and functional. You can look up, I was going to say in the phone book, but you can look up online a fire suppression company and see if they would do that for you. And they will do that for you. You just have to find one nearby. And then let's talk water heaters. So water heaters, the thing that we want you to be aware of is the temperature of the water. So it's recommended to set your water heater to 120 degrees or less. That will prevent some scalding and burning. Some health experts advise that people with certain health conditions might want a higher temperature of 140 degrees to reduce the risk of exposure to bacteria, but you have to weigh those pros and cons yourself. A second line of defense against some scalding that could work if you want to have that higher temperature on your water heater is to make sure that your shower valves are pressure balanced. To me, I see that one price tag in the corner. I might consult a plumber for that myself. So I might call that a double price tag. But again, that's something that's up to you to decide. And finally, we're going to talk about throw rugs and step stools, because these could be really anywhere in your house. So these are a real concern. I know over the years when I worked in home care and did home evaluations with folks leaving the skilled nursing facility, throw rugs and step stools were always something we mentioned. So throw rugs can be a trip hazard. You want to make sure that, I know you probably see this braided rug. It's a very popular style. We've probably all got one in our house or had one at one point. But the problem with them is they're very slippery. They don't have a grippy surface on the bottom. Um, if you use a walker or a cane, or if you're a wheelchair user, that can really easily move when you are using your device across that throw rug. So that's why we want something a little bit heavier, a little bit more secure, something that has like a double-sided tape on the bottom, perhaps, or a grip to the bottom. So if you look at this green check mark picture, you'll see that's what's called an anti-fatigue mat. And they're a little bit thick. So you do have to be careful if you have balance struggles with some balance, because those thicker cushiony mats can be a little tricky to stand on, especially if you're not wearing like supportive shoes at the time. But the good thing about them is that they have a grippy bottom and they're harder to move if you're using a walker, a cane, or a wheelchair. Um, and then we want to look at these step stools. So I'm sure we've all seen one of these black fold up step stools in our life. You can probably buy them at like a dollar store, right? Um, but that means they're probably cheaply made and not very good to stand upon with your full body weight. It also doesn't necessarily look super stable. Like you can see how those joints, because it's foldable, it's kind of unstable there. It also doesn't have a grippy surface at the top for your foot. So this one next to it with the green check mark has all the options. It checks off all the boxes. It's got a handle to hold on to. It's got a wider base of support. It doesn't fold up, so it's very sturdy. Um, it's not probably as easy to store as one of the small ones. And yes, I would agree, Brenda. Don't buy these little things. They break very easily. I don't know that they were actually designed to hold your full body weight. So those are our general kind of topics that we'll touch upon that kind of go throughout the whole house. And we're going to move on to the exterior of the home. So when we're talking about the exterior, like we're really focusing mainly on the entrances to get into the home, whether it's an apartment or a home, a single home, family home, a double family home, anything like that. We want to make sure it's free of clutter, protected from the elements, well lit, and accessible. So we're going to talk about all of that over the next couple of slides. So first here, we want to talk about your your address numbers. So of course, we know it's important to have an address number so that emergency services can find you easily, right? It's ideal if it's a big enough number to read from the street. So the further back you are from the street, the bigger you want those numbers. Or maybe you want them illuminated, even like the reflective glow in the dark kind of numbers that you put maybe both on your mailbox and your home, so that emergency services can really find you if they need to, especially at night. We want to think about a heavy doormat. So not just a little, flimsy doormat. Yes, there are some really cute little doormats out there that you can buy at the home store, right? But you want something that's heavy, that's solid, it's not going to blow away. But you also want to think about something that's not going to be a trip hazard for when you are trying to get into that threshold there. And finally, outdoor lighting. Definitely helpful to have outdoor lighting, preferably something that's at a height that doesn't require a ladder for you to change the light bulb, so that you can easily access that light bulb to change it when it needs to be changed. Um, I could go on so long about entryways and things. We do have another whole slide here about it, but overhangs and zero step entries. We're going to talk about overhangs first. So overhangs are ideal. Not every house has them, and that's why there are um, two price tags over here, because that's something that might be a little bit more expensive to take care of. But you'll notice that this house has like a pretty decent overhang over the door. So that means that you could stand under there in the pouring rain and fumble with your keys to find the lock. It will it's protected from the snow, so you have a clean surface to kind of stand under while you're getting into the house and out coming out of the house. You know, that's definitely something that if you don't already have that, it's probably something you would need a contractor to do. And then we're going to talk about doorways for a second. So if there's something that you wanted to write down, I would say that the ideal width of a doorway is between 32 and 36 inches wide. Um, 36 inches wide is really ideal for a wheelchair user. Um, if you know anything about wheelchairs, the tires usually have a rim on the outside for your hands to go on. And sometimes a more narrow door, less than 36 inches, you're going to rub your knuckles on the door frame. So 36 inches wide would allow for that wheelchair to easily pass through. Um, which leads me to zero step entrance. So we talked earlier about universal design. Well, I really just said the words, right? But there's a couple of words that I want to talk about here. So universal design is that overall term that means that any person, regardless of ability or disability, can enter a home and live in that home. So that's universal design. So a wheelchair user, a person who's using a walker, a person who's using their two legs, a person who's using a cane, crutches, any of those things can easily get into the home and live on in the whole home and have the entire place accessible. So all the door widths are going to be 36 inches wide, right? So that's universal design. There's a couple other things that we'll talk about in the bathroom that are more universal design as well when we get to that. But in general, getting in with a zero step entrance is part of universal design. Um, livability means you could have a 2-story home. And if you have no way of getting up the stairs aside from the staircase, it's not universally designed, but it could be livable if there's a bathroom, a full bathroom, and a bedroom on that first floor and a zero step entrance. So that makes the house livable. Now, if you have a visitable home, so visitability is when you have, living space that has like a living room, a kitchen, and it just has to have a half bath that's accessible on the first floor. That just means you're visitable. So those are those three terms: universal, visitability, and livability. Just a little quick lesson. Those are words I like to throw around, so I might use them again throughout the presentation. But zero step entryways, there's a lot of ways that you can do that. We're going to talk about ramps in a few minutes, and I could talk about ramps for a whole hour, but I won't. But zero step entries, you could do it if, depending on the height of how high your door is from the ground, you could do it with landscaping. So again, that's a double price tag for me for sure, because you would need a landscape architect who would grade the property properly so that there's no, water that goes into the basement, and, you have it the right pitch, the right angle. So that's definitely a professional needs to do that. Contractors could be very well versed in a zero step entry. Occupational therapy practitioners also very well versed in that as well. So if that's something you're interested in, those are the kinds of professionals you would want to reach out to. This is a really cool thing: swing clear hinges. Now you'll notice there is a single price tag up here. Personally, I would have a professional do this myself, because I could see myself putting it on backwards, upside down, and then having it not be functional. But the purpose of a swing clear hinge, you can see in this little kind of animation here. If you have a regular hinge on your door, the width of the door, so like however wide the door is, and they're usually a couple of inches wide, right? And then they've got the doorknobs. That's going to be in your space. So that's going to be within that 36 inches. So if you have that swing clear, it takes the whole door and kind of offsets it to open up wider. And you could expand your door frame up to 38 inches just by putting in that swing clear hinge. So just something to think about, to give you just a little bit more clearance when you're opening the door. I've also recommended to some people, if they live alone, on their bathrooms just to take the door off. So sometimes that helps. Couple other things. These are some quick fixes, things to think about with your front door for your entry, and actually some things go along with other doors as well. Peepholes. If you are the kind of person who likes to know who's on the other side of that door, if you don't have a peephole, maybe you have one of those camera doorbells that kind of alerts you on your phone or on your computer or something and tells you when there's somebody at your door. um, I'm going to skip over the center one, the doorknobs, for a second, and just move over to the locks. Having the swing chain or the swing bar or the chain lock is a good safety feature to have to keep yourself secured. But I want to really talk about the handles here um, for doors. So a door knob is actually not as universally designed as this top one, this lever handle here. So a lever handle, the idea is you can open a lever handle door with your palm, with your elbow, with your knee. So you don't have to have that dexterity, that fine motor coordination to turn the knob. You don't have to have the grip strength as well. So a lever style handle is definitely more universal design. So I just want to point that out, that that's something that we'll talk about when we get to really any door in your house. A lever style is ideal. And now we're going to talk about steps. So these are what's called walker steps. Obviously, if you're going to have steps, that's not universal design, right? Because a wheelchair user could not get up that. I will share that this picture, I would love it if we put some colored tape at the end of each of those steps, because to me, looking at that visually, it looks all the same. It almost looks like a ramp, right? Um, so for my own personal vision, I would want some brightly colored tape on the end of each of those steps. And these here are what's called walker steps. So what makes it a walker step is it's a lot deeper. That the tread is a lot deeper and the rise is shorter. So a person using a walker could physically lift their walker up onto the step, press down with their hands, and then step their feet up. And then move the walker again, step up, move the walker again, step up. And the whole walker, including the walker and the person, would be on each step. So that's what makes it a little bit easier. But again, this does not call, this would not be considered universal design. Did I miss talking about the door locks? I talked about the slide lock, the swing bar, and the chain lock, just being something that you might want to have. It's kind of an alternative to that peephole if you wanted to be able to open the door to see who's outside. That's an idea that you could have. The other thing here that's on there is a deadbolt lock. That's really more for security. And one more thing, actually, now that you brought that up, one more thing to talk about with doors is there are, digital locks that you can do versus a key. So if you're struggling with, grip strength and that fine motor coordination with a key, maybe a digital lock where you have a code could be an option for you as well. So thank you for bringing that up, because that made me think of that as well. Okay, so walker steps, we're good. The other thing I want to talk about here with steps is the railings. What you want with a railings is on both sides. You want a railing on each side of the stairs because yes, and the doorbells can definitely show you who's at the door for sure. Those digital ones, right? But the railings, even when you're just going up and down regular steps without a walker, sometimes people hold on with both hands, right? Or sometimes they just hold on with their dominant hand, maybe. And when you think about it, your dominant hand, my right hand, would be holding on to the right as I go up, and then on the right as I go down. So I would want a railing on both sides, right? And ideally, the railings want to go past that last step so that you're not kind of reaching back behind you as you're stepping down off the final step. Let's see. So that's steps. Okay. Now it's ramps. I got to rein myself in because I will talk about ramps for a really long time. You will notice that this is definitely a double price tag item here because ramps are a little bit more expensive. There are sometimes grants that you can get to or apply for to have a ramp put in on your home. There are rentals. So let's talk about the rentals first. So we're going to talk about temporary ramps. So, ramps can be permanent or temporary. I always say everything can be temporary because you can always take it down, right? Um, but the temporary ramp that's in question here in the center, um, they usually come in like a modular type of setup. So the company will come out and measure the height from the ground to that entrance. So they will measure that height, and then they will determine how many pieces of ramp that need to be installed temporarily. And I say temporarily because this might be somebody who potentially has to use a walker or a wheelchair just for 6 weeks because they're non-weight bearing from a surgery or an injury, something like that, and they know that they're going to be getting the mobility back, um, and won't need the ramp forever. So that would be like the temporary ramp usage. um, the permanent ramp, like this first one here, that's really something that's kind of built to your house. Again, in my mind, it's not permanent because you can always take down the wood, right? What makes it a little bit more permanent is it's built to your house. So it's going to be something that's, maybe matches the decor of your house, or perhaps it's stained the same color as your deck, so it's just a little bit more permanent. Um, so for these two ramps, for both of them, for any ramp really, when you're considering where the ground is to where the door is, that distance, for every inch of rise, you need a foot of length for ramp. I'll say it again. So for every inch of rise, you need a foot of length. So that means if you have a 3-inch height difference from the ground to the door, you need 3 feet of ramp. If you have 12 inches, you need 12 feet of ramp. So this is where it gets a little tricky with ramps because some people just don't have the real estate, for lack of a better word, in their front yard to incorporate that much distance, that much length in the ramp, right? Um, so what you could do there is you might have to have what's called a switchback. So it goes down and then it turns and then it goes down the other way and then it turns and then it goes down the other way. So depending on how many feet of length you need is going to determine the best type of ramp for you. Now, I always tell people that the ramp doesn't have to only go on your front door. I know lots of people who install the ramps in their garage, which I think is a brilliant idea because usually it's less height and also it's covered. It's covered from the elements. It's great. I also know people who put their ramp in their backyard, goes right up to the deck, and the deck has a slider that goes inside, which is usually often wider of an entryway. So if you're in a wheelchair, that's a lot easier to get in. So just think about that. If you do need a ramp ever, doesn't have to be the front door. Just think about that. Um, this last one on the all the way on the right here is a threshold ramp. And what a threshold ramp is for that really short height, right? So you can see here that the surface of the sidewalk to the entryway of the door is super short. It's probably like 2 inches. So that's probably a 2-foot threshold ramp. What that is, it's a really heavy, like dense, like a foam. It's almost like a welcome mat, but it's a little denser and thicker. So it's you put it down, it's not going to move on you, but it's pretty easy to kind of maneuver around. Um, and so that's what a threshold ramp is. Um, 1 inch of rise for every foot of horizontal distance, not ramp. Yes. Um, okay, so let's if I don't move on from this, I'll talk about ramps forever. All right, so this is the last thing about getting into the home that I'll talk about is this is a vertical platform lift. So this is definitely a double price tag, maybe even a triple price tag. But this is something that is really good for limited space. So again, if you have like you're looking at this entryway is several feet up in the air. So that's going to be a crazy long ramp if you had to put a ramp in, right? The vertical lift is just going to be an elevator. It's just going to bring you up to that top level. And I've actually worked with some people who have these installed, and it's because they have like a split level ranch. And so that front door, if you got in the front door, you still then have to go up another elevator or a stair glide or something to get to either of the living spaces. So they had a vertical lift put in the backyard to the deck that brought them right into the kitchen. Um, this is definitely something that gets installed by an elevator technician. It's not something that you buy in a box and put together yourself. They are also great for, the weather. They usually have like a weather cover, or they can have, some of them are completely enclosed even. They also they don't leave you stranded if the power goes out. There's a manual crank. So that's something that you want to think about just in case. I know some people get nervous about riding in one of those outside, and then it's suddenly the power goes out. What are they going to do? They're going to be stuck, but you're not. There's a manual option as well. So again, that's not for everybody, but it's something we like to let people know about. So we're moving on to the kitchen, my favorite room in the house. So regardless of how many rooms your house has, residents and guests tend to just congregate in the kitchen. I know that's something that happens in my house often. But even the most welcoming kitchen can still have hazards. So we're going to look at a few ways to make your kitchen a little bit safer. So here are a few quick fixes, and we'll call them quick fixes, and maybe they might be something that you personally would prefer to have a professional do. So again, these are totally up to you if you want them to be DIY or not. What I want to talk about first is the handles. So the handles on your drawers and on your cabinets. So you'll see here, we call them D-shaped handles. And I think this cabinet one really shows it pretty nicely because it looks like the letter D, right? Kind of a similar shape here on the drawers. But again, those are ideal, much like that lever style handle. So the D, you can kind of slide your hand right in and use the bigger muscles of your arm to open the door rather than the smaller muscles of your hand to open that cabinet door or drawer. If it's on a drawer, you can kind of stick your hand down, or you can stick your fingers up the D, and it's just a little bit easier to open the door. The drawer in that one. So that's what a D style handle or D shaped handle would be. Drawers and open shelves. So we always recommend that maybe you store things in drawers or open shelves to make it a little easier to grab them, rather than, I know some kitchens have those lazy Susans where there's always something that's falling in the back that you can never get, right? Or they have the deep cabinets that are next to the stove that you have to like really reach into to get that heavy pot or pan out. So this is not necessarily universal design for everyone. I think personally that everybody has a different preference of where they like to keep things. I often would recommend to people, especially those who are living by themselves, or maybe it's just you and your partner. So there's not as many people eating meals. Maybe you grew up having a huge family and now it's just two of you. Don't overcomplicate things. Just have a couple of very often used items, keep them on the counter, or keep them at that most accessible shelf to you or the most accessible drawer. My mother does this all the time. I was saying to Janine earlier that years ago, my mother attended a home fit presentation. And then I think it was the next year, she and my father were building a house when they moved. She made them do all of these things. She made them put in lever handles. She made them put in D-shaped handles on all her cabinets and drawers. She has some pretty high cabinets, but she has her never use it china at the top of the cabinet. We use it once a year for a holiday. And oftentimes my husband will go up on the step ladder and get that out for her so she doesn't have to access it. But all her usual suspects, the tea mug that she always drinks out of, those are all on that eye level shelf for her. So thinking about that, your own kitchen, have it set up the way that you would functionally use things. Those anti-slip resistant mats, I showed you that earlier, that kind of anti-fatigue mat. Um, rethinking the space that you have. So maybe standing at the counter to prepare your food has become taxing. Do you have a small kitchen table or a lower kitchen surface where you could sit on a chair and, prep the vegetables or prep your meal? So thinking about those alternate prep spaces in the existing space that you have. And I totally get it. Not all kitchens have that ability to have more space, but think about what you have and think about what you could use. And here are some harder to do things that might be a contractor related type of thing, like having a lazy Susan installed that, spins around and gets you all the things, or having those shelves that come out when you pull on the handle, it pulls the whole shelf out and you can access everything that's in the back of that cabinet. Um, like in this picture here, um, are these practical for a fold out pantry door? Brian, I'm going to have you flesh out that question a little bit more. Which thing are you thinking about it being practical for a fold out pantry door? As you're writing in that, I'm going to go on to the next thing here, but I want to talk about this surface here. Oh, the D handles. I think it would work for a fold out, like a bifold door is what you're thinking, I think. Um, the D handle, yes. So regardless, you want to be able to just kind of stick your hand in there and pull it rather than, grabbing a tiny little knob. That's the idea of the D handle. So thank you for clarifying. Um, this pull out kind of surface here, I love this. It's definitely something that's installed by a contractor, and it's sturdy so that you can do meal prep on that surface. You can cut vegetables, you can, lean on it a little bit. I wouldn't put your full body weight on it probably, but so that's something that might be, if you have limited space, maybe you have that type of thing put in. Open shelving, maybe removing those cabinet doors completely if that's difficult for you to get in and out of. Um, the cabinets over the refrigerator, I always think of those as like the useless cabinets, because when do you ever go up there? Put your useless stuff up there. Put the things that you only use once a year when you have guests come over who could come and stop by earlier and climb up on that ladder and get those things out for you if you're not, um, able to get up and down that ladder safely. Um, having sensor faucets, you know how when you go into a bathroom, like a public bathroom, and you stick your hands under the water and the water comes on, right? They actually make those for home now. So they make all sorts of different sensor faucets that are probably a little bit more pricey, right? And you need to have those professionally installed, because I think there's some like mechanisms in there to make the sensors work. But there's some that you just tap with the back of your hand and the water comes on, and then you tap it again and the water goes off. Also having a lever style, similar to the doors, right? A lever style sink is universal designs, because you can do it with the back of your hand or your elbow. Doesn't take the dexterity of turning a faucet. So that is the kitchen. We're going to move on to the bathroom. So the bathroom is probably the most life-threatening place to fall, right? When you think about falling in the bathroom, think about all those surfaces. There's the hard floor, the toilet is hard, the countertop is hard, the tub is hard, there's water involved. So the bathroom is probably the most dangerous room in your house almost, right? And that's why we want to really think about making the bathroom a little bit safer. So these are some things that are quick fixes, some DIY kinds of things that you can make your bathroom a little bit safer. It's a very slippery place, right? So when we think about those mats that are outside of our shower or our tub, you want to make sure it's something that's got that grip on the bottom. I know sometimes there's those really soft, cushy mats, but if there's nothing gripping on the bottom, it's just a sliding a slide waiting to happen, right? Um, so thinking about that for outside, but then when you think about what's inside the tub, you could have those, um, they're like, uh, the big plastic no slip mats, I find that those, if they're not cleaned properly and often enough, those can get a nice film on them that makes them actually more slippery. So I personally don't like those myself, unless you can find one that's really good or you're really good about cleaning it like frequently. Um, I like the non-skid strips in the tub. They're like those stickers, I back in the 70s we had the like daisy ones that you could stick all over the bathtub. Those have a little grip, like a little tooth to them. Those tend to be a little bit better at gripping. So I think that that helps. But night lights in the bathroom, I'm a big fan of motion sensor night lights or night lights that turn on as soon as all the lights are off. Um, because if you have to get up in the middle of the night, go to the bathroom, definitely have that night light on in the bathroom, right? Um, Commode chairs. I know somebody wrote in the chat, high toilets with a grab bar next to them. If it's out of your budget to get a whole new toilet, maybe it's in your budget to get a 3-in-1 commode. Um, Fun fact, 3-in-1 commode. I don't know if anybody knows what all three uses are based on the Medicare guidelines. That's what they consider it, a 3-in-1 commode, because it can be used as a raised toilet seat over the toilet. It can be used as a bedside commode, which, it has a bucket and a lid so that you can have it next to your bed and use it there at night. And then the third use that Medicare sees a 3-in-1 commode would be a shower chair. That's what they say. Um, these are pretty inexpensive, sometimes covered by insurance, depending on what your needs are. So that's another option if you can't get one of those taller, what we call comfort height toilets, which we're actually going to talk about on the next slide. And then this last piece here is a transfer bench. So a lot of people see these and they don't love them because it's hanging over the edge of the bathtub, and people are terrified that there's just gonna be water everywhere. And there can be if it's not, if you're not using your shower curtains the best way, right? Because like somebody said in the chat here, in the bathroom, people remove their clothes, footwear, glasses, and hearing aids. Exactly. It's a terrifying place to be, the bathroom sometimes, right? Um, so with that shower chair, what you do, the idea is you sit on the outside with your feet on the floor outside of the tub, and then you swing your legs in so you don't have to actually step up and over the tub. So if that's difficult for you to get your feet up and over the tub, maybe a tub bench is the best idea. What I recommend for people here to prevent the water going all over the floor is to get 2 shower curtains. So you have the pretty one on the outside, and then you get one from the dollar store on the inside, and you make slits on the side. So you're going to make a slit in front of the tub bench and then in back of the tub bench. And then you have 3 kind of pieces on the bottom, and you tuck them in so the water rolls right into the tub. And Irene mentioned that some water districts are giving rebates on toilets right now, which is great. That's awesome. So if you are in the market for a new toilet, look for those kinds of things. I also like to recommend anytime anyone's showering while sitting, whether it's on one of these transfer tub benches or a seat or a built-in seat in your shower stall, I definitely recommend a handheld shower, because there's nothing worse than having to move your head in all sorts of different directions just to wash your hair, right? Contorting your body just to get your hair washed. So these are a few other harder things to do. Maybe having a contractor come in for these. Um, you know, making a comfort height toilet, you might need somebody to come in and do that for you. This little piece right here is called a toilevator. Just love that word. It's great. It's costs a little bit less than a toilet itself, but it adds a couple of inches of height. So you can actually put it underneath your existing toilet. Again, I say you, but I also say plumber. Thinking about your counter height. So when you see this sink over here with this kind of cutout underneath the actual sink part, that makes it a little bit more universally designed, because a wheelchair user could wheel underneath the sink, given that the height is ideal. So the ideal height of the sink is 36 inches. It requires a little bit less bending. If you are a wheelchair user, you might actually want something a little lower than that so that you don't have to reach up and over the sink to like wash your face. It might be awkward. Um, so again, thinking of these things in your own personal body and your own personal needs is really important. That's why the home fit checklist is really good because you can kind of go through your own situation and look through things at your house. Um, Shower options we're going to talk about on the next slide. So, I'm sure you've all seen the commercials. I know we have them all over Massachusetts, those places that'll take your tub out and put a new shower stall in one day. I don't know if it happens in one day. Um, but it's ideal to have a walk-in shower. So what we're going to call a zero-step entry. So you'll see it's kind of hard to tell from both of these pictures. This one here looks like it has a little bit of a lip. So to me, unless that lip is collapsible, which it very well could be, it's not a zero-step entry, but it could be a collapsible one. This one, I also can't really tell if it's a step over or not. So anytime there's a little lip, it's not considered zero step entry. Um, but you'll see this one is a nice wide, huge, spacious shower. You could easily put a chair in there, a seat. Um, and you've got your handheld shower, you've got your grab bars, which we're going to talk about on the next slide. Um, but this one here has a kind of a built-in seat. It flips down, so you have that seat. I always say to people when they're looking at these styles and if it has a seat that's already installed, make sure it's a seat that's big enough for your bottom because some of them are really little. This one is a nice like long one, so I like that, but some of them are really tiny. So just make sure that when you're looking at those that you try them out in the store, sit on them, see if it's comfortable, see if it's a good height, see if it's a good size for you, because it's not always universal there. Now, grab bars. Grab bars have changed a lot in the 20 years that I've been working in occupational therapy. Used to be just they only had those, medical grade metal bars that looked like you were in the hospital, right? Um, Now they come in all sorts of different, like, this right here is a grab bar that goes also as a toilet paper holder and dispenser. This grab bar is also a soap dish. This grab bar also holds your shampoo and your soaps. Um, so they've come a long way. They can actually match the decor of your bathroom. They 100% need to be installed by a professional because they need to have a supportive blocking. They need to go right into a stud. So it needs to be really professionally installed to be safe. Um, these clamp-on bars are not ideal. We don't necessarily make, recommendations that those are something you purchase because they're a little rickety. They're not always, safe. And then these suction cup ones, I would personally never trust that with my own body weight. It's just not something that I want to if I'm going to use a grab bar, I need it to be able to support all of my body weight, and that is not going to do it for me. Um, let's see. Yes, the clamp-on ones are terrible. The suction one, yeah, they're terrible. They don't hold their suction, and it's just not safe. So we're going to move on to living spaces, just other kind of general areas. So, your bedrooms, your living rooms, things like that, places where guests gather. Um, we want to make sure that we're thinking about lighting. Lighting is really important, especially as we age. Natural light during the day is fantastic. Of course, now, it gets dark at what, 4:30 sometimes. So, having the natural light during the day is great, but then having lights that come on maybe at certain times when it starts to get dark is great, especially if you're out. Like I'm a big fan of timer lights, having them come on at a specific time every day. So, number one, if you're not home, it looks like someone's home. And number two, if you're coming home, you have a light on already, so that's a nice option. Night lights, I've already talked about how much I love night lights and those kinds that come on automatically when the lights go out, or the motion sensor ones are also good. Um, Motion sensor lighting outside is is good and bad. I will say it depends on where it's angled, right? You want it to turn on early so that you can light your path, right? So thinking about that. We also want to talk about just the light switch. So this rocker switch here, I know we've talked about universal design a million times today, but rocker switches are technically a universal design because you can hit that thing with any part of your body. You can hip check that thing, whatever, it'll still turn on rather than having that little fine motor coordination of turning on and off that little switch. Um, Wall sconces are nice to have by your bed because, then you don't have to get up and walk across the room to turn off a light. So if you just have a little switch that you can turn off from bed is ideal. And making sure that if you are using cords for lights that are going across the floor, making sure those are secured out of the way so there's no tripping hazard. I like that somebody put in the chat they're taking a class for caregivers that encouraged using motion sensor lights under the bed and on the stairs. I like those too. Especially, I know I've stayed in a few hotels that have the motion lights when you step your feet on the floor. I love it because then you're like in a hotel, you don't know where you're going because it's not your familiar location, right? So having that light that comes on as soon as you step over the bed is great. Um, Hallways and stairways, some quick fixes here. Just thinking about keeping the path clear. I know when I had little kids, they left stuff on the stairs all the time. So keeping those stairs clear is ideal. Having a grippy surface on the treads, I can say, having ridden down an entire flight of stairs on my tailbone, it's not fun. Get some grips on your stairs. um, and then also, just if you are somebody who has a lot of up and down the stairs a couple times a day, maybe you have a bag at the bottom of your staircase that you throw things in and then you only have to go up once. Um, this is one of those really expensive fixes that if you are a double floor home and you need to get up and down those stairs and stairs are difficult for you, this is something you may want to consider. It's a stair glide, stair elevator, stair chair. I've heard them a bunch of different ways. They are a couple $1,000s. Definitely something that an elevator professional needs to install for you. Um, they can be a really ideal situation, but something I always tell people is if you have one of these in your home, if you use a cane, a walker, crutches, a wheelchair, any kind of assistive device, you need to have one on the first floor and one on the second floor. So that when you get off the stair glide at the top, you have it there. When you get off of it on the bottom, you have it there. So because it's really difficult to have somebody bringing it up and down the stairs while you're on the stair glide. And we have 2 minutes. Look at that. I am getting through it all. So some next steps for you to think about are just choosing a quick fix that you can tackle yourself in the next couple of months, maybe after the holidays. I know it's a busy time of year, right? And I want you to use that home fit guide that you're going to get in your email because it really is a step-by-step, kind of guide to getting through. Somebody is asking in the chat, what's the safest stair covering? So carpeting, I would say if it's a carpet that is secure and not too thick of a pile, that's good. Hardwood, if it's going to be a hardwood, that's what I rode down on my tailbone, so don't love that. I would definitely have the grip, like that kind of grippy traction kind of sticky thing down on there. I'm not sure what luxury vinyl planks are, so I can't answer that one. But these are some AARP resources, so you can go to aarp.org/yourhome. There is an iPhone only app. Oh wow, that's a very high price for a stair lift. Yeah, they can be really pricey, Kathleen. But use the home fit guide for sure. Download it from the website or wait until it comes in the email that you're going to get from Janine or from AARP. I want to say thank you. You all kept through it with great questions till 8 o'clock. And I appreciate all of your questions. Used stair lifts are also available. I do want to say that. Thank you for pointing that out, Jean. I would just recommend that you have it professionally installed and inspected for sure. Great. I'm so glad that people found it helpful. And Marianne, did you have a question?
Marianne, are you there?
Oh, I guess not. No question. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, I think this went pretty well. I love the questions. Honestly, it makes the presentation go by really, it kind of livens up the presentation. And even if I can't see your faces, it's great to have those questions in the chat. So I appreciate all of you. Will I